Hey everybody, welcome back to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today we're going to talk about some of our favorite marshes, including the world's largest freshwater cattail marsh, Horicon Marsh, which can be found in Wisconsin.
It's a Marsh Talk day. Everybody loves Marsh Talk, right?
Do they?
Probably. Marsh Talk radio. That probably doesn't exist, but it maybe should exist
At
because the
first,
marsh is an exciting place to go birding depending on the time of year.
at first I thought you were saying Marsh Talk, like the TikTok version of Marshes, the
Marsh
Marsh
Talk,
side of
like Marsh
TikTok.
Talk, like
Marsh
just a
Talk, like TikTok.
marsh themed TikTok. It would probably be
Yeah,
better than regular TikTok. It'd probably contribute to far less brain rot if it was just videos of cattails and creatures that live inside the cattails instead
I
of dance trends.
I know you're a big TikTok fan. We do have a TikTok though, if people want to check it out.
It's
It
probably the
is
best TikTok because there's no dance trends on it yet.
yeah, you don't know what we put on there. I manage this. It's just all like bird dance. This is the woodcock dance.
I feel like there's somebody out there that does that.
Probably. It's a lot of bird stuff.
A
So
lot of
I think
bird stuff.
there's some other animals on there too. But we also have an Instagram too that you guys can check out. But yeah,
I know there's no
marshes,
dances on the Instagram.
not yet.
Not yet.
But marshes are cool places to go as long as it's not too buggy. And as you were saying, time of year plays a big role because at least with Horicon Marsh here, like if you go in the winter, it's pretty dead. You're kind of hoping to find some raptors soaring or maybe a snowy owl, but other than that, there's not really a lot going on out there.
Yeah, it depends on time of year and it depends on individual year too. So we actually have a couple of marshes by us in Wisconsin that we've gone to a lot of times. There's a marsh that's in our hometown called Vernon Marsh, which we have a lot of different experiences with Vernon Marsh because sometimes you can hit it at the sweet spot and find cool stuff. I remember one of the first really cool birds that we saw when we started birding was a northern shrike that was at that marsh during winter time. So you can find these cool raptors at the marshes. Snowy owls will frequent marshes if they're in the area. They don't always come down in that big of numbers. But I've seen one at Horicon Marsh. We've seen one together at Vernon Marsh. So winter a little more dead, but there is still habitat available for a lot of the species that like open areas. But where you really want to hit the marsh is the rest of the year because there's birds that breed there that can be difficult to find away from the marsh to impossible to find away from the marsh. And then a lot of migratory birds use marshes as well, including shorebirds and a lot of different duck species.
Yeah, I think at least for Horicon, spring is for sure my favorite time to visit just because stuff is moving through. And then there's just a lot of excitement and it's not too buggy at that point. Midsummer just gets kind of hot and buggy. You can still find a lot of cool stuff and you can bird by car pretty well there, but I feel like the spring is the most exciting. And one of the signature species to find there is the trumpeter swan, which actually had a big reintroduction after their numbers plummeted quite a bit. So Horicon's kind of a stronghold for the trumpeter swan.
So before we talk about just marshes in general or other marshes we've been to, why don't we talk a lot about Horicon Marsh because it is such a premier birding destination. There's a lot of stuff to do there, and I would say that it's laid out in a pretty birder friendly way with the different stops that you can make there. So Horicon Marsh, it's a massive marsh in the kind of southern central part of the state. It's really close to Lake Winnebago, which is one of the largest inland lakes in the region, actually.
Yeah, it says
Um,
Central Eastern. It's definitely
Central
more on the
Eastern,
eastern
yeah.
side.
Yeah, it's a little more on the eastern side. So it's probably, what would you say, like an hour away from Milwaukee and an hour away from Madison-ish?
Yeah, maybe a little longer. You can kind of like triangle,
Yeah,
those
there's
three
not really
places.
a good direct route there, which is really the only reason it takes so long. So from where I live, it's usually like 50 minutes to an hour, which doesn't make any sense because it's just as far mileage wise as some places it takes like 30 minutes. But it's because you have to back road it a lot. But it's a marsh that kind of has a layout of north to south, so it's longer going that way than it is wide east to west. It has most of the good habitat that you can access on the north side of it, but it does have a cool visitor center on the southeastern side of it. And then the interior, who knows what goes on in there? I think you can kayak in there, but I don't know what stuff lives in there.
There's probably a ton of rare things that you never see because I think it was the first year we were birding, someone reported a black-bellied whistling duck in there. And it was kind of like they saw it for a little bit and then it went into the interior and it probably stayed there for a while, but nobody would know just because it's hard to access. So there's probably tons of rare stuff that ends up showing up there that people just never see, such as king rails. There have been king rails in the past. It's a great place for blackneck stilts as well that actually breed there.
Yeah, blackneck stilt is a species too that if you look at a lot of range maps, it doesn't even have a range in the Midwest according to a lot of these things, but they definitely have established in the Midwest now. They're in Ohio where they breed at some of the marshes in just south of Lake Erie. They're up here, definitely a Horicon Marsh, a premier place to see them, and they're in other places too. So it's a species that's really gotten a stronghold in the marshes of the Midwest, even though at some point apparently they didn't have a range there.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And we did a full birder's guide to Horicon Marsh that kind of takes people along the best places to go and where you can find certain species. Um, It is tough though because you have Highway 49 that kind of actually goes through the top part of the marsh where the speed limit's pretty high, but it's a great place to bird. So you got to pull over and then be careful that you don't get hit by a car or something. So that's a little dicey when you're up there. And then it's funny because one side of it is in one county and then the other side's in another. So if you're really into county birding, you have to make two checklists, one for each side of the road.
Yes, that is true. And if it's okay with you, I kind of want to start with the route we usually take. Just
Sure,
kind of
go
tell
ahead.
people, so usually we'll come from the south and then go the eastern side of it. And there is, like I said, that really cool visitor center. There's a couple visitor centers actually, but the one that's the farthest southeast is my favorite because it has a walking trail along the back. It kind of has a figure eight sort of thing going on. And it also has a lot of cliff swallow nests and purple martins and also barn swallows that nest actually on the building too. So that's one of the first stops I like to make. Check off cliff swallow for the year in the spring and see what else is hanging out there. You can usually find some cool birds in that area. And then you can go inside too, and they have a nice snapping turtle now. And they have some optics inside that you can look out over the marsh and see if you can spy anything out there.
Yeah, it's a fun place to go. I feel like that snapping turtle's been there for a while. He's a good educational ambassador. And then they do some osprey platforms out there too. That's a good place to get looks at trumpeter swans. And if I'm not mistaken, we looked for a Eurasian widgeon there. So rare things do show up in the
We
visitor center
found
areas.
Eurasian widgeon there.
Yeah, it was kind of like it's all kind of a blur looking for that widgeon. I feel like it was really windy that day.
It was.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not that much of a blur, apparently.
So
But then,
it's somewhat of a blur.
yes, but then if you head north, there's roads that you can pick up that go from east to west, and those go right into the marsh. So those are kind of your window to the marsh road. So there's Dike Road, and then there's Ledge Road, and then there's also Point Road. And Point Road actually connects to Old Marsh Road. So you can go through the entire northern half of the marsh on Old Marsh slash Point Road. And I'll usually not go from that side though. I'll usually kind of go around and then hit 49. And like you said, 49 can be a really, really good place to bird, but it also can be a little hazardous. Nothing's ever happened to me in terms of getting hit on that road, but the
Well, I
cars
think if you
fly
got hit,
by.
you probably would just wouldn't be here. I mean, it's
Well,
like,
I'm
what
saying
is
a
it?
car, I've never been sideswiped or anything, but you have to pull over to the side and there's not that much space.
What's the
So
speed
you'll,
limit there? Is it
I
55?
think it's 55.
It's pretty high. Like you got to
Well,
be
you see the
careful over
geese
there.
and stuff hanging out on the side of the road and turtles trying to cross. You're just like, oh, I hope you guys are gonna be okay.
Yeah, I wish they would reduce that. It just seems kind of ridiculous to have that high of a speed through such a wildlife gem. But I wanted to mention those roads that go into the marsh. That's where we probably had our best experience with an American bittern because we went to Horicon the first time and we were driving one of those roads and a bittern just walked out in front of us and we're like, this place is amazing. We're like, this probably happens all the time. And then we've like never seen an American bittern that well ever again. And also along those areas I think there was a surf scoter that was hanging out in there. So
Yep.
there's those pockets of water,
Redneck
redneck
grebe.
grebes, where stuff hangs out and you can find some really cool species. In the spring off those roads, you get some good migrants too. Like the cuckoos can be in there. So it's worth kind of going to all the different places at Horicon. It doesn't take too long to kind of check everything out, and you can do most of it by car. which is nice. But yeah, doing those, heading up towards 49, you can do the visitor center, the other visitor center that's over there. And then there's the auto tour loop, which I think is probably my favorite thing, which connects to Old Marsh, which you can then get out and walk. And they also have that little floating boardwalk trail too.
Yeah, Old Marsh Road is my favorite place to go birding, probably there. I think it is worth noting that a lot of the times Ledge Road, Dike Road are accessible completely by vehicle. So if you weren't able to walk very far or something like that, you could just car bird and still have some pretty good success. I like to walk them because then you can hear everything. I just find that you can get into the minutia of what species are actually out there. And you could spend an entire day at Horicon Marsh easily. We kind of go and try to find what we want to find, and then when we're done with that, we'll kind of take off because we've been there before. But if you're there for the first time, I recommend making, at least 6 to 8 hours looking for birds and stuff there if you've never been there because there's so much to explore. But near 49 too, there's another visitor center called Marsh Haven, which you can go into as well, and it has kind of a gift shop in it. There's a little section that is kind of like a miniature zoo with some Wisconsin native animals. I think you pay like $2 or something, and then you can walk in the back there. But they also have bird feeders where they'll get yellow-headed blackbird. There are purple martin nest boxes there. That's a good place to get purple martin as well. And they're very kind in there too, every time I've gone in there. So it's a very pleasant place to just stop in and visit. And yeah, I like Marsh Haven. I think it was only open till like 4 o'clock usually, most days though.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. You'd have to check online for their particular hours, but all along that area too, you have a chance for whooping crane. So it's important to keep your eyes out for those. And then Horicon's a great place to see black tern as well. So
Yes,
there's
that's
just
true.
signature species of the marsh that we talk about in our Birders Guide video. Leaf bittern as well, where it's just probably the best place in the state to reliably see some of these species.
Yeah, and then during different times of the year, like the fall, you'll get shorebirds that come through as well. And there's also not necessarily in the marsh, but in some other parts of the area in the county, you get flooded fields that you can find stuff at too. So we found, I think it was a marbled godwit this year. Yeah, it was a marbled godwit near Horicon Marsh. I don't think you were there for that.
I was not.
It was me, Chris, and Colette found that marbled godwit. And then you can find blackneck stilts in different parts of the area too. But at Horicon Marsh, it's really dependent on the water level. So you'll come upon some places that some years are great shorebird habitat, and then some years are great duck habitat instead. So I remember 49. I don't know what they were doing, but one year it just didn't have water on one side, or it had really low water, and there were thousands of shorebirds out there. And I don't think that's ever happened again. I don't know what they were doing. Floating boardwalk too was the same way. One year they drained it because there was a bunch of invasive goldfish people put in there. So they had to drain it, and it was great shorebird habitat. I remember Ruff showed up. It was a really cool place to go for a while there. But there's usually some place that has good shorebird habitat.
Yeah, waterfowl, of course, is pretty solid. Things like eared grebes show up there too. White pelicans you can see. I would say it's just like a bucket list place to bird. If you love birding, you got to visit Horicon Marsh at some place. We have a top 5 places to bird in Wisconsin. I believe it's number one on the
Yeah.
list just because it's a pretty iconic place. People come from all over to check it out. So if you haven't been there, it's a good bucket list place to check out. Definitely one of the top 5 places to bird in the state.
We've encountered people from other countries there too. We've encountered people, there was a guy from Belgium. A lot of new birders will end up there too because they hear it's a good place. I remember during COVID, remember that one guy you love to tell this story.
Yeah, he was pumped about seeing his black crowned night heron, and then he had to like run and tell his girlfriend about it. It was a nice little moment. That was when we walked Old Marsh Road, like all of it. I think we had some Wilson's phalaropes in there that day. There's just something magical about marshes though. And in Ohio too, we got to experience a lot of marsh birding as well, which we were at the biggest week in American birding, and you would think that it's mostly just the warblers and stuff, but I was surprised how much great marsh habitat there was over there. We got great views of blackneck stilts, a lot of shorebirds to check out. There are some yellow-headed blackbirds. Um, Marshes just great ecosystems, and there's so much to see in them. And I feel like it's fairly accessible to. Like it's not like you're straining to look at warblers. There's normally things that are loud or very visible, like swans, where you can get good looks. So I feel like the marsh might be a good kind of beginner birding place as well.
Well, it's funny about them because it's such a specific kind of ecosystem, typically. You know what stuff is going to be there when you go to a marsh, especially in the Midwest. You know you're going to encounter marsh wrens probably, soras, Virginia rails, maybe a gallinule. If where we
Great
live,
egret.
black terns, yeah, great egrets, black-crowned night heron, great blue heron, green heron. So you have a very good idea of what's going to be there. It's very consistent most of the time.
If your life is feeling out of control, you're like just get me to the marsh. I know how everything is gonna be.
Yeah, I know how it works in the marsh. Trust me. If I go
Yeah,
back there, I'll be at home again. And like I was saying earlier, there's that Vernon Marsh that's in the county we live in, which we've had some good finds at Vernon Marsh too and some funny experiences. That's one where in the summer it gets buggy. Horicon Marsh, I don't
oh
think I've
yeah.
ever been there when I felt it was super buggy. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's open enough that the wind kind of keeps all the bugs down. I don't know why I've never been attacked by deer flies there like I have at other marshes.
Yeah, but at some you go and before even getting out of the car, they're just pummeling the windows and you're like, I think I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Well, we had that one classic experience where we were at Vernon Marsh and we started slowly accumulating deer flies. And for those of you that have never dealt with deer flies before, they like to dive bomb you and try to nestle into your hair to bite you because they're used to trying to bite animals where they'll get into the fur. And so you'll just feel something tapping you on the top of the head and it's deer flies. And we probably had like 15 of them following us around and we eventually ran to the car, got in the car, and then they're just hitting the windshield and hitting the side windows trying to get in still. It was wild.
Yeah, they're probably one of the more annoying critters to encounter. Like mosquitoes you can kind of swat away, but they're just kind of relentless and they just kind of like, like to bounce off you a lot.
It feels like someone's trying to poke you in the top of the head, just like tap, tap,
Yeah, I don't know if
tap.
this works, but I saw some guy, he put a black and white hat on and then he put like a piece of tape on the back. So he was saying when the deer flies bomb, they get stuck in the tape. I don't know if that would work at all. I've also seen people where they'll have like a hat with like a fake dragonfly on it. And they said that that's supposed to help keep bugs away because, the dragonflies will eat a lot of those insects. Don't know if
I
either
can't
of
say
those
that I've
work.
ever seen anybody walking around with a dragonfly attached to
Maybe
their
it'll be
head.
a new thing, new up and coming type of deal.
Maybe we just
Trend.
need to do a better job of taming dragonflies so that then you can just have some pet dragonflies that'll follow you around and take care of any annoying insects.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, living in the future here.
Yeah. What do you think your favorite marsh bird is?
Up that lives here or anywhere because you can get into some Florida marsh stuff.
I mean, give me one that lives in the state and then give me just overall favorite. I think I know my two.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to choose from. I think the blackneck stilt is a classic. I'm always excited to see the first blackneck stilt of the year. They're just a really dapper looking bird with that black and white color scheme, and they have those bright pink legs. I think they're really cool. I would say probably more than those, I like whooping cranes. Obviously, whooping cranes are, few in numbers and always a treat to see. I don't know if you can count them as marsh birds specifically. Like they are, but they're not going to be in every marsh. But I would say whooping crane. And if we're taking whooping crane off the table, blackneck stilt, I would say anywhere purple gallinule.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a fan favorite and just a beautiful species. I feel like we didn't talk at all about sandhill cranes because the whooping cranes are way more exciting to us, but a lot of the marshes around here they'll have sandhills in the area. So
Not even
as
just marshes, parks, businesses,
yeah,
schools.
they do kind of take over to some degree, but the marshes around here, as soon as the ice, even when the ice is still like on the water, you can hear sandhills calling, and it's a good sign of spring for us. To know that winter's kind of over. So I always appreciate hearing the prehistoric sandhill crane vocalizations. But around here, I am a big marsh wren fan. I just like their spirit. I
Huh.
like their noisy nature. I like that they do the splits between cattails sometimes. So they're probably my pick, at least for the moment, of favorite
Why
marsh bird
is
up here.
every wren so sassy? Every
I
wren
love it.
species
It's
has so much
fantastic.
attitude.
Yeah.
They're
I
like
think
the Napoleon complex personified in bird form.
they're just great. They just have a lot of spirit, you know, and I can appreciate that. And then I think overall I'm going snail kite.
Okay, yeah, that's a very specific bird. And that reminds me, we didn't even talk about limpkins yet.
Well, it hasn't really been a good summer for them, honestly.
No,
Have you heard of any in the state? I haven't
I
heard of
haven't
much
really
at
been
all.
looking that hard, so I haven't been scouring reports or anything, but I haven't seen anything come through about them yet. And it seemed that they were trending as a species that was going to start showing up on a basically annual basis, and it doesn't seem like that's been the case this year. Either that or it's been low key because people have seen them already. And I feel like right now you're checking eBird, aren't you?
Oh, of course, we gotta get to the bottom of this
I have
because
not
there
seen
was
any
so much
reports.
excitement last year about it.
I thought it was even 2 years ago there was the first one started popping up.
Um, I don't know exactly. Let's see here. So this is just overall. You can see how they've spread, which
Yeah,
is
it's crazy.
wild.
And for those of you that aren't familiar with the plight of the limpkin, they were a species that was pretty much a Florida specific species because they would eat the apple snails. And they actually have a bill specifically designed to get into apple snail shells, which is pretty cool. But as more invasive snails started taking over the country, they were able to move and expand their range. So we've had them here the last 2 years. It looks like there's one.
You know, I mean, in general, they have been popping up in a lot of places this year. So I mean,
It
even
doesn't
just
look
their
like they've
move,
gotten as far north though.
they really took over Louisiana though.
It looks
Louisiana
like it.
and Texas, they've got a nice stronghold, but they have popped up in other places. It's kind of speckled. Let's
Was
take a
there one
look
in
at
Wisconsin or was it in
that was
Illinois?
Illinois.
Okay, so nothing in Wisconsin. I feel as though I recall August was when they showed up. It was either like late July or August the first year, so maybe they're still on the move.
Well, you see that, and then let's compare it to last year. Well, this is whoops.
I was like, that looks no
Yeah,
different.
yeah, I was like, did we? Okay, so this is
Wow, yeah, look at that.
no, that's historical. It's
Oh,
not
why are you fooling me like this? If you
it's
want it to be that one, you have to pick that one, by the way. So you have to click the dot next to
oh
it.
yeah,
Yep, there you
okay.
go.
All right.
I mean, that looked like
Definitely more
the same as the
last year.
historical range.
Yeah, look at how many more in Wisconsin. Let's
Click
see
on
when
some
these
of
are
those and see
from.
when they were there.
September. So yeah, maybe we're just early.
Which is kind of weird though, because you would think that if they were gonna show up, they would want to do it sometime in the summer. But it
I
looks
mean,
like it
most
was
of these look
fall.
they're like, yeah, the later half.
Okay, so maybe we're still in for Limpkins.
Well, everyone was saying hot Limpkin summer. Seems
There was
like
a July one that you just popped up.
flourishing Limpkin fall or something like that. Fundamental Limpkin fall. December. Yeah, a
Something
lot
funny
of
about
these are
Limpkin
late.
too. Well, there's a lot of things funny about Limpkins actually. They were named Limpkin because they looked like they had a limp by the first people that came to the New World and named
That's
them.
tough as a first impression.
Yeah, they were just like, why does that thing look like it's limping? And so they're just like, let's call it Limpkin. They also scream as a call, so that's funny. You're just
Yeah,
checking
so
up on
I guess we'll
Louisiana.
have to. I mean, look at that. It's totally taken over.
So there was hot Limpkin summer. Let's hope we have a fire Limpkin fall.
Yeah, what was it? Somebody when we had the flamingos, people were saying something about like fancy flamingo fall or something.
I thought
Yeah, we'll have
those
to
were
see.
summertime though.
Um, let's see how they've been faring this year.
The flamingos?
Yeah, I know there's been some hopping around still.
Well, you're in 2023
Yeah,
still.
we're changing it. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, there's some in the Northeast, it looks like.
What's up with that one report from like Baja, California? Oh, it's in San Diego.
I wonder if these are like escapes. Whoa, that's
Look,
really
that is a
pink.
bright flamingo. Do you think that was edited or do you think that's just the brightness on those?
I don't know. It's showing naturalized though, so I wonder if they're like escaped birds.
Could be.
If anyone has info on this, let us know. I know there's been a Chilean flamingo that was hanging around
Those are
in
beautiful flamingos.
California.
San Diego has to be a wild place with naturalized and escaped
Well,
birds.
our others don't show that, so I'm assuming those are like not countable then.
I don't know, that's weird.
But yeah, it looks like the Northeast, there's still some hanging around. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll see how that kind of goes. But overall, hopefully they kind of made it back to where they needed to be.
Digging into eBird maps is always a fascinating
You can go down
experience.
such a rabbit hole. Like you could spend like 3 hours looking at different things on there. It's
In the
cool that it
biggest week
exists.
in American birding, we did the bird trivia, and one of the categories was range maps. So they would just put up a range map of some bird species without any other information, just the range map, and you had to figure out what it was, and it was challenging.
Yeah. So if you ever want to play a game with your friend, you can show them a random eBird range map and see if they can guess what species it is.
I feel like if
Um,
we go to the biggest week again and Trey goes to the biggest week again, we're gonna have him prepare by just looking at every bird's range map, just getting it, in the head so he
I
remembers.
think we need to divide our team. Like you take the northeastern birds, you take the southeastern birds, and we'll have them all down then. They'll probably be like, "This is a South American eBird range map," or I'm
Probably.
sure they'll do something to make it more difficult. But
Yeah,
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 so
absolutely.
that's a little bit about Horicon Marsh, marshes, limpkins, and flamingos. So if you ever been to Horicon Marsh, let us know. And in the comments, if you're on YouTube, let us know what your favorite thing is about marshes. Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.